Welcome to PhD with Women on IT Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hacks delivered will be by our guest Charlotte Fuller. How to build the bulletproof confidence for your career. Episode 85 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you are building the bulletproof confidence for your career. Let me just run past a couple of honorable mentions. Congratulations, Ashmi Banjeri, on winning the Developer Emerging Talent Award. Way to go, Ashmi. And congratulations as well again on being one of the ambassadors together with me of Google Women Tech Makers. Inspiring message from one of the most powerful women at New York Stock Exchange president and IPO VIT guest, Lynn Martin at Fortune. She encourages women to fight your corner in a male dominated field. I had the privilege to meet Lynn Martin. She's awesome leader, and I really encourage you to not only fight your corner, but look for role models like Lynn, who are working hard, doing epic shit, and bring uh, opportunities for others. Congratulations to Maria Paz Buenos Para on being nominated for the Q Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences. It's also a Q Group's 10th anniversary, and Maria brought yellow butterflies of Gabriel Garcia Marquez to the banquet, such an inspiring woman in STEAM. By the way, why did STEM become STEAM? STEAM is a progression of the original STEM acronym plus one additional element, art. Why the change? The integration of the arts into STEM learning has allowed educators to expand the benefits of hands-on education and collaboration in a variety of ways, promoting creativity and curiosity. Let's go back to today's episode. We are going to learn how to build the bulletproof confidence for your career. You want to be successful. You've got a lot of talent and you're ready to take the next step in your career. The question is, how do you get there? Well, it all starts with building confidence. And today we are going to build that bulletproof vest that is going to take you to the new career path. And our guest for Positivity Hack Delivered is Charlotte Fuller. She's just the person you need. Self-proclaimed confidence expert is on a mission to teach ambitious women in tech how to build the bulletproof confidence they need to thrive in their careers. As a specialist in helping industry leading organizations strategically adopt emerging technologies, she has experienced so many talent challenges that so often come with being an ambitious woman in a typically male dominated environment. She is now determined to support female tech talent to build the confidence, skills, and mindset required to reach their full potential. Charlotte, let's start with a simple question. Where in the world are you today?
Well, today I am in Cape Town in South Africa, but I'm originally from the UK.
Originally from UK. Normally you're based in London or any other area?
I am actually completely nomadic now, so I am not really based anywhere. I travel the world full time.
Do you want to say that you've got a little van and you're traveling the world this way?
No, I don't have a van, unfortunately. Although that sounds very fun. It's a lot of flights, and
It's a lot of flights.
Yeah.
Well, somebody said it's a grandiose way of saying that you're homeless when you can only afford a van. But anyway, it's great to have digital nomad with us today, Charlotte. Let's start with a simple question. How did you build your bulletproof vest?
Yeah, interesting. I love that you call it a bulletproof vest, actually. And, I think my confidence certainly grew over time. I think if I go back and think about where it all kind of started from, I was working, by trade, I'm a digital transformation consultant, or I was primarily in technology. So working really with industrial type organizations, manufacturers, engineering, renewable energy companies, and helping them adopt advanced technologies. And I worked within large corporate consulting environments with big clients, and prior to that in finance as well. And I think in those environments, typically very male dominated environments, there were rarely women in my team, if ever. I wasn't always, well equipped in terms of confidence or having the sort of ability or self esteem to hold myself well in some of those situations. And to give you the full kind of story on it, when I was working in corporate consulting, I really enjoyed it for a while, but the environment got very toxic to a degree, and we were working, all the time, all of the hours, as is quite typical. But didn't have what I realized was that I didn't have the confidence and the skills to be able to handle myself well in those environments. And what happened was that I ended up having quite a severe burnout, both physically and mentally and emotionally, and having to take time out of work for a few months. And during that time, what I realized was that, one, I had to get to a position where this didn't happen again. And then also, if I could, I would try and stop this happening from other women in those environments as well. And so confidence for me has been built particularly over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, really, where I've really gone on this quest to realize, well, how do you build confidence? How do you support yourself in those types of environments that are very, fast paced, very rewarding, if you like, but also can be also, quite toxic at times as well. And so, confidence for me really has been built over the last few years from realizing where I had limitations and where I needed to improve, and then putting myself constantly in environments where I could do that. And then also looking at where I had beliefs that didn't serve me, and things that I needed to clear up in myself, really.
My goodness, you almost discover all the things that are necessary. Let's not spoil the fun of discovering the fact. I wanted to ask you, because I think quite often, especially in the corporate environment, we
Mm-hmm.
are building our confidence based on how many years you've been working with the company or how many years of experience you bring to the table. Is it relevant in technology?
I mean, I think potentially you're asking, like, is there a link between the years of experience that you have and the amount of confidence that you have? And is it relevant in technology? Like, sure, years of experience are always valid, right? But I think that's not necessarily linked to the amount of confidence that you have or need to have. I think you can be fresh into a new technology role and have absolutely tons of confidence if you know how to cultivate it.
I would totally agree with you. In the age of the new collar workers, we are seeing a new emerging talent that is not necessarily has a background in technology, that is bringing ideas and know-how based on daily knowledge, on knowledge that can be found on YouTube, for example. We are joined on YouTube, speaking of YouTube, by Caleb Wakungo. Caleb, lovely to see you here. I hope you bring some questions. I believe Caleb is also in Africa. Not sure how far away. I suspect it may not be a good distance to reach you. However, Caleb, you have opportunity to ask Charlotte a question. Right. It's not necessarily age related. It is not how many years you bring to the
Yeah.
table. It's really getting your structure, getting, as you said, knowing your limitations and room for improvements, and also knowing having the beliefs and maybe challenging these beliefs.
Yeah.
So let's start with a simple structure. How do you build your confidence if we were a newbie and we came to you for a consultancy
Yeah.
advice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, confidence building is always, so the first thing that happens is that people come and they're like, can you give me some tips and tools? Right? I'm building confidence. And what I like to do is strip it right back to the individual. So the process in terms of building confidence when I work with clients is, let's first off build the solid foundations for lasting confidence. Okay, so that involves a lot of understanding what are some of the situations that we feel confident in right now, and what are some of the situations that we are less confident in. And then I want to understand why. Okay, because often there are lots of limiting beliefs, limiting thought patterns, and lots of things that go on when we are, worried about how we are perceived in certain areas or whether we are confident enough to be in a certain area. So I really like to start there. What I then have people do, and then what I do with people, is help them rewrite the narrative. So how do we build a more constructive and supportive narrative for us? Because what we tell ourselves internally will ultimately lead to our success or our lack of success, and from there, once we've kind of built this great base, then we can give tools and then we can put things on top of that. But I always say, let's not start with the tools, because otherwise it's like building a house on rocky foundations. So we need to get underneath all of that first of all, to really build a foundation that works. And so that's the general process that I go through with a client.
My goodness, do you mean we need to book another live stream with you?
Sure, I can take you through this.
Excellent. Good. That's a very good start. So let's start with residue, the things that we have been taught by our parents or our mothers, fathers, and it's still resonates so deeply with our souls. I mean, I was taught once by my math teacher that I will never pass the school. Luckily, I didn't admit that I'm trying to prepare for that exam, and I, of course, passed. But I still remember that teacher telling me that really deep moment of cry and really not believing in myself because somebody didn't believe in me. How to tackle that challenge of self-esteem?
Yeah. I think, well, the first thing to realize is that, we're all affected by those things. We all have things that come from our past and our childhood, first of all. And I think I can really resonate with what you just said there, actually, because the same thing happened to me, but not in terms of maths, in terms of written English and spelling. It was spelling in particular. And the teacher actually said it was like trying to flog a dead horse. So we should just give up, which is ridiculous because I write a lot now. So I'm glad that we didn't give up. But in terms of how do we get over those things and build self-esteem, these things take a little bit of time. The honest answer. And we really need to look and challenge, as we've already said a little bit, about whether things are ultimately true. So what I have clients do, and what I've done myself and will continue to do, I think, forever, is whenever limiting beliefs come up around if we look at self-esteem is just, do we believe that we can achieve something? Are we willing to put ourselves in that situation? And so what generally happens is, when we're thinking about trying to put ourselves in a new situation, thoughts will come up for us, beliefs will come up to the surface. And whatever that belief is, what I have people do is really write down clearly what that belief is and everything that is coming up around it. And then what I have people do is like I said, is this ultimately true? And question it. Because 9 times out of 10, it's not. If we look at your maths problem, for example, is it ultimately true that you couldn't pass that test or weren't any good at maths? Well, of course it's not. But when we are young, specifically between, up to the ages of 7 and a little bit after that, we're like a sponge. We take on everyone else's belief systems and we are unable to question anything. And so as we go through adulthood, if we don't start questioning some of those things, we actually we're ended up living as if we are living from the place of a very young child. And so question, is that belief ultimately true? And then I'm going to tell you now, for whoever's listening, if you're wondering, it's not. And then rewrite that and say to yourself, what is actually true in this situation? And stop there, and we could go on about this, but I think that's a good place to leave it. So really question it and rewrite it.
I love the fact that you talked about the limits, what is ultimately true, because we know the example of, for example, the King's Speech. You probably everybody have seen the movie when we watch the king who is stuttering and is trying to improve his speech and eventually overcomes that fear of speaking in public, and his speech is almost fluent. So there is this element of, can I do it? Can it be done? And I remember just a couple of years ago when my daughter suffered through the accident, and she was so stricken by the fact that the doctor said it will take 3 years for her to regain feelings in the leg, which had, nervous system had to be rebuilt and so on. And I was thinking, like, in a perspective of somebody who's 40 something years old, 3 years is like nothing. For somebody who's 19 years old, 3 years, it's like eternity. So really, it's really good that you are talking about what is ultimately true, what can be changed, what is there to teach us or tell us, and how we can change that narrative. Now, of course, there are so many slogans, Charlotte, and I wanted to talk about the fact that, we see, all these quotations: believe in yourself, you can do anything, you can become anybody. And it just becomes such a truism, and it has nothing to do with reality. And for somebody who's, as you mentioned, you've been suffering mental breakdown, I think this is not the moment to hear these things, is it?
So you broke up very slightly there to the end of your question. So could you just repeat that last bit for me?
Of course, with pleasure. So I was just trying to establish, how can we start our, journey to believe in ourselves or building the confidence when we are suffering burnout.
Okay. So yeah, so I think piecing that together, I think, we're looking at, the light keeps going off for me. So there we go. Is that, like you said, there's all of these kind of these slogans where it's like, you can do anything type thing. And sometimes when we're in a really down place, that the leap from there to I can do anything is not something that we can get on board with right away. It might be true. It is true, I believe, honestly, that we can do anything. But we need to be able to get ourselves in a place to believe that so that we can start to get there. So how we do that? I mean, what I there's a few different ways. I think that the one thing that I really like is what we call sort of the ladder of believability in these sorts of things. So it's thinking about, well, if I can't believe right now that doing absolutely anything is possible for me, if I'm, like your daughter was in a place where I'm being told it's 3 years for me to be able to kind of regain full health, what can I believe is possible right now? What is the next step? Can I believe that I can take a first step, for example, that is possible for me? Can I then believe something else? And can I start building these things? Because that over time will allow us to kind of get on board and make huge strides. But like you said, I mean, going from one to anything is possible for me isn't always easy. The next thing we can sort of think about in terms of not just the sort of ladder of believability, but also thinking about how we get ourselves emotionally into a better state. Because when we are emotionally in a good state, such as a happy state, a state of gratitude, we can do a lot of things, right? We have this momentum behind us, this passion that allows us to move forward. But if we're coming from a place where, for example, we might have been in a deep depression or in an anxious state, for example, we might not be able to go straight from there to I feel amazing. So what we want to start to think about is, instead of spiraling down, which is so easy to do in our emotions, is think about how we start clawing back up just very quickly. So for example, if I'm very upset or depressed in the moment, what is the next best thing that I can work on? It might not be that I can suddenly go from that to being ecstatic, but maybe it's that I can just make myself feel a little bit better. Can I get a hot cup of coffee that makes me feel a little bit better? Something that makes me feel good. And then I really like small steps for moving things forward like that.
Small steps. And what about the vision boards or career plans or anything that is a tool that would help to navigate through these muddy waters?
Sure. I mean, things like that I absolutely love. What vision boards, I have vision boards, absolutely. I use things like that. I think it's about getting really clear on this sort of thing. And I think as well, other tools that you can use, for example, is like different meditations as well and visualizations that can really put you, because what is true is that the mind in visualization, and this has been proven time and time again, doesn't know how to differentiate between the visualization and reality. So if we can put ourselves in a state of meditation or just a simple visualization where we can see a brighter state, a brighter future for ourselves, we're actually beginning to change our brains significantly and the wiring of our brains. So the more that we do that, the quicker we will actually move into a more positive state. And then in terms of sort of practical things like you mentioned around career plans and things like that, I mean, absolutely. Always great to have a good plan. I am a strategist by nature. So having a sort of current state and end state and how we get there is in my nature. So good planning and goal setting absolutely works. But I definitely find that the strategy without the mindset and the narrative underneath that is often not very productive. You need both.
Fabulous. We have a couple of questions. Gata Bellon is asking, do you think female-only schools help build confidence? Charlotte.
Interesting question. I mean, the answer is I went to a mixed school, so I don't have the personal experience around it. But I think, I don't know is the answer. I mean, there are different things that we could speculate around it, in the fact that I definitely built a lot of confidence and a lot of skills in dealing and interacting with different people in a mixed school. I don't know if I would have experienced that in a girls only school. But I think it also very much depends on the specific environment and the teaching environment and, parents and all of that sort of stuff as well.
Well, to paraphrase the famous quote, if you think you can't do it, you can't. If you think you can have confidence, you can. If you think you can't have confidence, you can't.
Absolutely.
Let's go to the next question. Olga Vasina, what particular differences do you find when building confidence in women of different ages?
Yeah, great question. I think it's sort of, it's really interesting because the way that we build confidence is the same in different situations. I think some of the things that women, for example, I tend to deal with women who are just coming into their careers, women who are coming back from career breaks, and then women who are at a sort of leadership level who are looking to kind of expand themselves. So some of the differences that I see is that some of the women just coming into their careers are more nervous around things such as, how do I feel seen in a particular environment, right? How do I build confidence around speaking publicly, about putting myself out there and all that sort of thing? That's what I tend to see there. Women who are sort of coming back from a career break, often maternity leave, for example, we end up dealing with confidence issues around, do I feel good enough to be in this environment? Do I still have what it takes? Is my knowledge still relevant in this age? And then women that are really, stepping into that leadership position or are in there and moving forward, it tends to be a little bit more around dealing with the sort of the ceiling side of things. Like, am I reaching a ceiling for myself? How do I deal with what's typically a very male-dominated environment at that level? And then how do I handle those types of things? I think the commonality between all of them is, am I good enough? And how do I feel good enough?
Mm. How do you feel good enough? You should feel good enough because you're joining us with Charlotte Fuller to ask a question or to make a comment. You're more than welcome. We will address every comment or question. So, thinking about confidence, just yesterday, a Woman Tech Makers, as an ambassador, I was invited to a training on salary negotiation. Is there a particular way how a confident woman should approach salary negotiation?
I think you should approach all situations with knowing how to assert yourself well, from being able to communicate with assertive communication styles. So being confident in what you want. And we keep using the word confident, but like, what does that really mean? And it means like sitting in your worth for me. And so approaching any negotiation situation in knowing how good you are and what you bring to the table, first and foremost, knowing how to ask for it effectively, and then being willing to walk away from that situation if you are not given what is acceptable to you. I think those are some of the things that I think are really important within a negotiation environment.
Charlotte, how do you negotiate the salary? What's
You
your
asked what?
style?
Yeah, I'm very direct. I think direct and being very clear about what you want, what you bring to the table, and I always say, whenever someone asks me about this, I'm like, go higher. you know, go higher. Like, we as women, typically, we never ask for enough. I've made this mistake before in the past. It's certainly not one I make anymore. um, but that is how I approach it. I approach it very directly, very much. This is what I bring to the table. And one thing, want energy that is very attractive, well, in any relationship, whether it is in a negotiation with employers or whether it is in personal relationships, is the energy of I want you, but I don't need you. So get yourself in a place where you really feel that, whether you can get yourself in a position where you have different offers on the table, whether you are, like I said, willing to walk away, because the most powerful person in any situation is the one that is willing to let go of it.
Mm, absolutely. Well, let me give a shout out to our role model, Cindy Gallup, who advises ask for a number that makes you laugh out loud, and you will see a difference in attitude. Now, we are halfway through our live stream. We are still waiting for your comments, for sharing stories, and we have Charlotte Fuller joining us from African continent. Sometimes you have to wave. Luckily, we have energy, and there is a little lamp who is giving us hope to build confidence today. So, as I mentioned, we are talking about the bulletproof vest. Some people need a bulletproof helmet as well, and the whole costume. Now, I have to share with you, Charlotte, that I am still sometimes struggling to think about myself as a confident and accomplished woman, even though I've been through a lot in terms of building my career and in terms of bringing community or being a leader in front of the community. But very often I still struggle with public speaking. How would you advise for somebody who is confident, but the confidence is running out the door as soon as they step on the scene?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that that you think of yourself as not confident in terms of public speaking, but look at you right now. And we all kind of have those things, don't we, where we appear to be so confident to the outside world, and then inside there's something missing, perhaps. In terms of public speaking, I always think, I flip it around. I flip the narrative around. And instead of thinking, this is about me, because we get caught up in thinking, specifically in a public speaking environment, that everyone is, everyone's going to judge us. We're going to get something wrong, whatever might happen. There's a couple of things. The first one is, we've all heard it, we probably hasn't sunk in before, is that people are too busy thinking about themselves, really, to be worrying about what you're doing. And it is the truth. And then secondly, in terms of like practicality, how do we actually change our mindset around it? It's, I like to think that, like I said, when I go into a public speaking type environment, it's thinking that I am here to give a gift to the audience. This is not about me, it's about them. And I have something really important that they need to hear. And by showing up in that environment, I am there. I am going to help someone. I can support them in that. And I am there to get a message across. And I think once you flip that environment and make it about your audience and not about yourself, it becomes it can calm your nerves quite significantly. Does that help?
Don't worry. Absolutely. Well, Charlotte, there is a little Polish girl, in terms of age, and creeping up and saying, you're Polish, you don't know English, you don't have TOEFL, and, all these words, you will be missing these words and you will only think in Polish. Anyway, it happens, but really, what helps is, there is another tool you can think about: everybody in front of you being naked. Apparently it works for some people. Anyway, we have In Love and in Pain tonight. Hi Beata and Charlotte, I'm learning so much in this live stream. I'm very grateful for your comment, In Love and in Pain, and I hope to hear from you. How are you building your confidence? Now, Charlotte, we talked about some tools that are very useful. what would you say, what's the benefit of building confidence? Because, I can't imagine everybody being confident, because we are embracing technology and diversity. We want different characters. Some are introverts.
Sure.
And can introvert be a confident introvert?
Absolutely. I'm a massive introvert, by the way. So yeah, so absolutely. And I would consider myself, of course, to be incredibly confident. So the two can exist together. And I think, what are the benefits of being confident? And I describe confidence as this: it's the ability to take our wants and desires and take action on them. So it's simply the ability to take action. So if we want anything in life, and I'm assuming that we all do on this live stream and this call, that we want to achieve something, otherwise we wouldn't be here, then having the ability to take action on our desires is critical. Because otherwise, of course, we will end up staying the same, and that's not what we want for ourselves. So it is vital that we put ourselves in a position to be able to do that.
How do you get to a place where you feel like you can handle any situation?
Well, like, I've mentioned before, it takes time. It takes a very specific belief system, a confident belief system that supports us. I think what I have got to a place in life in realizing that the belief that you need really is that it doesn't matter what the situation is, I have the resource within myself to handle it at any time, because you will have handled all of the situations that have got you to this point, and you've probably done that quite well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a well-functioning human being that is here today. And so we need to take the pressure off the situation itself and put the emphasis on ourselves and our own ability to figure it out in the moment. And so where my confidence comes from is that it's knowing that I might not know any of the situation. I might be walking into a completely new environment where I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen in there, but I know fine well that I'll be able to figure it out. And that's the belief system that we need to shift and that we need to get to. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlotte. We have another question, very specific, and I think there is a big role of taking things personally place here, because In Love and in Pain is asking how to have confidence in asking people to pay their debts. I feel embarrassed asking my friend.
Oh, it's very interesting. It's tough, isn't it? It's certainly difficult as well when it is a friendship and a personal relationship. I think with these sorts of things, you have to. There's two ways that it could go. You need to understand that this situation is really about boundaries more than confidence itself, and it's about setting strong boundaries with people. So what you have to really understand is that in this situation, what you are actually saying to someone is that I've lent you this money, and it doesn't feel good to me that you haven't repaid it yet, and I would like you to do so. So having confidence to do that, you have to accept that you might upset someone in this situation. It's quite possible. But then also I would approach this from a space of love and kindness, as opposed to being more abrasive, perhaps, where you risk kind of upsetting someone. You kind of want to try and neutralize it a little bit. So the way that I would potentially approach this is from a place of, I understand that you haven't managed to pay me back yet. Is there something that you're struggling with around this? Is there potentially a reason? Can we come to maybe an agreement around it? Because money's a funny one, isn't it? Because you are well within your right to ask for that money back that you lent to someone, assuming that was agreed up front, right? they understand as well, but it can be a little bit uncomfortable. So I think, like I said, always approach something from a place of love and kindness and understanding, and start there. Without knowing the rest of the situation, it's a little bit hard to comment on, but that's where I'd come from.
That's actually a very interesting topic, because being able to say no and set boundaries is critical to have the self-belief, self-esteem, and confidence that is necessary to have a healthy emotional life. How did you build that confidence in saying no and setting boundaries?
Yeah, I realized that it was vital to health, happiness, and success, first of all. And I realized that one of the things that tripped me up in the first place with coming to a place of of burnout that I was before, is that I did not have boundaries in place. So what that looked like for me at the time was taking on every additional project that I possibly could, to thinking that I was just going to make everyone happy, not having any time in my personal life, answering emails at goodness knows what time, all of that stuff that we're all guilty of, I think, at times. And realizing that actually boundaries were essential for a couple of things. One, in keeping me healthy, but secondly, in terms of, you do not perform well if you are doing all of the things all of the time, right? So you need to also take responsibility for that. So how do you get to that place? Well, first of all, you decide that you have to come to a decision about what you want in the boundary situation. Like, if you think of a situation at the moment, and if we take it a step back, actually, the way I think about boundaries, first of all, because people usually come to me and say, this doesn't feel good to me, but I don't know if I need to say something or put a boundary in place. My first response to that is, if something doesn't feel good to you on any level, that is the sign that there is something that needs to change. Okay, so you are allowed to feel not good. Okay, so the second step is really understanding what you want out of that situation. Okay, what does good look like for you? And then implementing that boundary. And so for me, this is the way that I kind of teach clients with that. The steps around this is, once you know what you want, understand what you will and will not tolerate then for yourself. Because once you get really clear on that, other people can then, you can then get really clear with other people on what that looks like. Now, when it comes to actually implementing boundaries, there are sort of nuances around it, but you have to understand that often when we are implementing boundaries, it can be a little bit uncomfortable, because the very nature is that the situation is changing, both for you and both for the person that you are setting the boundary with. And so you need to get yourself in a place where you're ready to experience some potential disruption and some feelings of uncomfortability. And then this is just one tip I use with clients, is practice the pause. So if you are putting a boundary in place with someone, ask them, you might send a request, you'll have to in this instance, you are verbally given a request for a boundary to someone. They're going to react a little bit differently. Practice the pause and do not say anything. Allow them to step into that pause and not you, because what's going to happen is that you're going to feel uncomfortable and try and jump in and change something. And so with that situation, that allows you to just give a little bit of a breathing space. And then I like to sort of, in a way, sometimes with boundaries, if it is in a workplace environment, for example, and there are many nuances to this, but say that situation is that your boss is asking you to take on a new project, for example, pass it back over to them and say, learn how to communicate assertively, right? So this is the whole different spectrum of things and a whole different skill set. Assert yourself clearly, but then say as well, thank you so much for thinking of me at this time for this opportunity. I'm at capacity right now. What would you like me to give up so I can support you with this? So you're putting things back on them. So to round up and answer your question, I realized that I needed to put boundaries in place because the way that I was operating wasn't serving me very well anymore, and things had to change. But learning how to implement strong boundaries takes time. It is, there are definitely specific methods and very easy methods that we can use, but you have to get to a place where you feel comfortable doing that. And again, start small and work up.
Micro actions, and I guess that's another reason for me to quote Cindy Gallop here. Be a trader, not a beggar, when you're setting boundaries, especially financial ones, because I suspect you also had a couple of times when you had to refuse some free of charge advice, right? I heard it very often. People reaching out to me, well, you're a startup mentor. Can't you give me advice? It's
Sure, right?
freeloaders
What else are you doing?
everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have nothing else to do in life but give free advice to everyone, right? How do you deal with this kind of approaches to your, let's say, digital transformation offers?
Yeah. I mean, the answer is that I'm in a place now where saying no comes very easily to me. I think I don't have a problem with that anymore. And I think you never have to be rude in these situations. You can just say, this doesn't work for me at this time, or thank you again for considering me. Unfortunately, I do not have the capacity to support people without, but you are willing to, you are absolutely welcome to sign up for one of my programs, and this is how I can help you. So you can say a polite no. I will just say no. It's up to you.
Ability to say no for your emotional balance. Charlotte, we are heading towards the end of our show. What is your strategy for problem solving?
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting question, and I've been pondering it, and I was like, is there a strategy? And I realized that I do have one. And what it is that when I am solving problems, what I do is, because when we're in a problem, we're in it, right? It's like we're so in it that we can't think of a way out of it. And so what I always do is, whenever I'm stuck in a problem, I always change it from what not what's the problem, but what is the solution. And I change, and I get very solution orientated, and I ask myself better questions around it. So, and I because one of the things that happens as well when we're in a sort of problem situation, whatever that is that we will catastrophize the outcome, and we'll be thinking all the time, what's the worst case scenario. And so by looking at the solution outcome and really thinking about asking ourselves better questions, such as, what some of the things that I ask myself is, what is the best possible scenario here? If this went right, what would have to happen for that to go right? And so those are some of the ways that I solve problems, actually, is to actually just completely change the narrative and the thinking around it, and ask yourself better questions that are more, that will lead towards a solution as opposed to keeping you stuck in the problem. I think you're on. I can't hear you, so I think you might be on mute.
I am on mute indeed. Apologies for that. I've been lip syncing here. I was just bringing quotation to the table. Know your value. Confidence breeds success. Act like the person you want to become, and people will start seeing you as that person, as Mark Ford says. Who is the person you aspire to be, Charlotte, and who gives you that confidence boost that you follow?
Very interesting. Um, who do I aspire to be? Oh, I aspire to be myself, but just a greater version of myself, someone that is just doing bigger things. I already, view myself as being successful as such, and I think that it's good for self-esteem to think of ourselves that way, but definitely want to be someone who is just living a big life. But in terms of a specific person that I follow, one of the people that I really like, who is wonderfully confident, is a woman called Amanda Francis, who is a female money empowerment expert. And she just radiates confidence, and she's amazing. So I think, she's probably someone that I would, if it was in terms of building confidence, that sort of thing, I think she's a good person to follow.
You definitely radiate confidence, Charlotte, no doubt about that. Experience tells you what to do. Confidence allows you to do it, as Stan Smith says. Is Amanda Francis a person you would like to invite for a private breakfast anywhere in the world, or is there a different role model you would like to have face-to-face meeting somewhere in an exciting part of the world?
I mean, yeah, I'd like to go for breakfast with Amanda. Maybe that'll happen one day. I'll reach out. That'd be pretty cool. I think, someone else that I would really like to have breakfast with as well is someone like maybe like a Richard Branson or someone like that. I'd love to just pick their brains and just say, like, what are your thought processes? Like, what went on, in terms of like taking the big risks and decisions that you did. So honestly, I am such a curious person that I would have breakfast with absolutely anyone just to find out about different people's lives. But I think those two would be pretty good bets.
Well, Richard Branson, with his quotation, opportunities are like a bus. There will always be a next one. So we will hopefully have that opportunity, Charlotte, because I would love to have a private breakfast with Richard somewhere on Necker Island, if possible. However, let's go back to the confidence building. And I wanted to ask you, how important is confidence building in a career of a woman in tech? And is there any other soft skills that you recognize that are critical for their success?
Yeah, I think, is confidence important? I think it's critical. Like we said, confidence is the ability to take action on what we want. The more confident we feel, the more, self-assured we feel, the more action we will take naturally. And we won't need motivation as such anymore, and willpower. It's just it just happens. You feel your worth. In terms of other soft skills, I think it's really interesting. Of course, there are the sort of obvious ones that we go through in terms of like public speaking and all that sort of stuff. But some things that come to mind for me is, we've already mentioned it already. One of them is the ability to assert strong boundaries and protect yourself in a work environment, and also ask and get what you want. That is really, really crucial. Another one for me is like nervous system regulation. And what I mean by that is the ability to calm ourselves in certain environments when necessary, but then also put ourselves in a situation, in a more hyper situation, should we need it in different environments, and be able to sort of be more chameleon-like and have that ability to fit in different situations. Because when we can basically command who we are in different environments and different situations, we have a lot of power over how that situation unfolds for us. So those things I think are critical. Is there anything else? Let me think of that I would say. So boundaries, confidence, self-assurance. And we've already mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again, is assertive communication skills, knowing how to communicate and how you are perceived when you walk into a new environment, because you teach people how to treat you. Okay, and you do that through your actions, through your words, but also through your energy. So being able to cultivate these things and build this strong energy of I am worthy of a situation naturally, you'll find that once you carry this energy, you won't necessarily have to even use your words or use your actions as much anymore, because people around you will feel it.
Radiate that energy and you will see a huge change. What is the number one book you can sit and think, oh, I wish I read it before I started my career?
So there are hundreds and hundreds of books that I could recommend, but I think my favorite book of all time, and I wish I'd just known about it, is one of my favorite authors is Stephen Pressfield, and his book The War of Art. And Stephen in this book really focuses on the notion of what he calls resistance. And it's the resistance is what we all face when we are trying to better ourselves in life, no matter what we do. So whether it be in our careers, or whether we are trying to bring some, actual art into the world, or entrepreneurs, or whatever that might be. And resistance is the force that we all are constantly fighting against. And it's the force that shows up as procrastination, for example, or not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy, and how this actually appears in our everyday life and how we overcome that. And I think once we understand how we can beat resistance and how we can use it to our advantage, that knowledge of it to our advantage, we can achieve a lot of different things. And so I wish I'd read that very early on.
Now you can share the knowledge with us with confidence. Can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote and how did it change you?
Yeah. So again, it's from Amanda Francis. I didn't expect to talk about her quite so much on this live stream, but her quote is, it's not faith until it looks like it isn't going to happen and you still believe. So I always apply this. I think very often, specifically in our careers and in life, there are things that we strive for and things that we want that don't always appear easily in our lives, and we have to keep working for it. And it's so easy to want to give up on that. And I think if we hold on just a little bit longer and keep working, keep pushing towards what we actually want, then very often we see that it comes through for us. So yeah, I think I absolutely love that quote.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, sharing the books that build your confidence. And that's it from episode 85 of the PhD livestream. Thanks to our guest, Charlotte Fuller. Practice the pause. Set boundaries, radiate confidence, and to stay updated and ensure you never miss another positivity hack delivered for a woman on it, and turn on notifications to be alerted once the video has been released. As always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and helps to build your confidence, because if you look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. Today is your day to hack the future, hack the positivity you want. Next week, we are joined by two powerhouse women from Malta, Martina Zamit and Rachel Kakia. Next week, 6 p.m. CET, midday EST, hack the future you want.